and partnering with amazing organizations.
That's right.
Tonight is a perfect example of partnership. So many organizations made this event happen. I want to thank the Family Homelessness Coalition, the New Destiny Housing, the National Public Housing Network, and Our Voices podcast. I also want to give a special thank you to Manhattan Neighborhood Network for providing this space. MNN operates in service to creatives, artists, vital organizations, and activists, and has been a leader in supporting independent voices since 1992. The incredible production and podcast studios are available at no cost to all residents. It's true. It's true. I was surprised when he gave me a tour about 2 months ago. He said, it's free. You should do an event here. I said, are you sure? And this is what happened. So thank you very much. It's a really cool space. So be sure to check out all their channels. I also want to show my appreciation to the people in the first row. They are living through a lot of the challenges that we're going to discuss tonight. City Limits is deeply committed to amplifying voices. I know this is important because 25 years ago, I was homeless, but I was fortunate to have a social network that listened to my voice and responded. The person who will facilitate this great discussion and with whom I have the privilege of working with is City Limits Executive Editor, Jean-Marie Everly.
Hi, can you all hear me okay? I'm a lot shorter than most of the people who use the mic, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Gary. And hi, everyone. My name is Jean-Marie Everly, and I'm the executive editor here at City Limits. I want to thank you all for being here with us tonight on this sort of dreary Monday evening, and a big thanks to our candidates for making it out and making time for this important discussion. To give just a short overview of how tonight is going to work, the first half of the program is going to be focused on family homelessness and questions related to that, and the second half will be dedicated to questions about NYCHA. We also do expect to have New York City Comptroller Brad Lander joining us about halfway through the program. I know Council Speaker Adams also has to leave a little early. Oh, okay. Sorry. Well, we'll take you as long as you're willing to stay, and we'll try to cover as much ground as we possibly can. So, great, I'll move quickly then. I know all of you candidates have been attending many of these types of forums over the last several months, but none that I'm aware of have been specifically dedicated to the issues of family homelessness and public housing, and these topics couldn't be more pertinent. At the start of this year, more than 130,000 New Yorkers were living in the city's shelters, including tens of thousands of children, as the city's rental vacancy rate floats at just 1.4%. At the same time, the New York City Housing Authority, or NYCHA, provides affordable homes to 1 in every 17 New York City residents, and is also facing nearly $80 billion in repair needs over the coming years. So let's get started. For the sake of time and because we have a lot of ground to cover, I'm going to ask the candidates to try to keep their responses to under 1 minute to each question. And I'd also like to say that I've got some folks in the front row who are going to be asking questions as well and joining me in speaking to the candidates. I've got Wendy James and Tarsha Cobb, who are 2 NYCHA residents. And we have Kadisha Davis and Vanjie Gonzalez of the Family Homelessness Coalition. And we appreciate you all for being here. And I know you all know who they are already, but just very briefly to introduce our candidates, and I went in alphabetical order. City Council Speaker Adrian Adams of Queens. We have former State Assembly Member Michael Blake of the Bronx. State Senator Jessica Ramos, also of Queens. And former New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer. Thank you all for being here. And for our first question, again, we're going to get into the issue of family homelessness, and I'd like to ask Kadisha Davis to come ask the first question.
Thanks to everyone for coming out tonight. And I would like to ask, what would you identify as the root cause of family homelessness, and what would your administration do to address the problem?
So root causes of family homelessness and how would your administration act to address those issues? Let's start with you, former Assemblymember Blake.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for making time to allow us to be here. This is a very personal issue. As you all know, when I was your assembly member in the Bronx, I would talk about this, about how my mama was homeless in Jamaica, how we sold dinners to pay our rent to keep our place on Creston and Burnside, how my first year in the assembly, how I slept on the couch in my office because I couldn't afford the gap of having two different places. This is real. This is not theoretical for me. And when we talk through to your question, it's multi-factor on what's happening. It is simply too expensive to be in New York City. We don't actually make it easier for you to have the chance to thrive. We need to increase the income thresholds because effectively you have to be too rich or poor enough to get access to a home here. We need to have local median income because AMI is not working for us. It is the fact that you have 1 out of 8 New York City public school students that are homeless right now, but there's also a working homeless issue because it's simply too expensive what's happening here. Very practically, what do I think we need to do? I think we need to eliminate credit scores being used when it comes to rent home ownership applications. I think we have to have a local median income. It's going to make it fairer for people to have a chance to have a home. I think we have to utilize money from the cash reserves to make sure we're addressing the crisis that's happening within NYCHA so that people can actually have an opportunity when it comes to heat and hot water and elevators. But then go a step further. At the end of the day, we need to build more middle class, working class housing so people actually have a chance to have a home here right now. It is simply too hard to keep a home. It is simply too hard for people to have a chance there, but it's also the totality of the experience and why we're making it too hard. Our city should not be this expensive. People have had a chance to fix it and they have not. I am running for office, full stop, because I want to make sure that you make and keep more money in your pocket, but you actually have affordable homes so you're not homeless in our communities.
Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams, running to be the first woman mayor of the city of New York. For those that were watching the announcements today, I did announce a guaranteed basic income program today. That's right. It is the economy. New York is simply unaffordable. And I keep saying, as the former assembly member said, it's personal for a lot of us that have lived this thing. I want my children and grandchildren to stay here. I don't want them priced out of New York City, the city that they love and that I love. Selfishly, I want them to remain with me. What I introduced today was a program to thwart homelessness, specifically for single women and for children. Our children are being born into poverty. What my program does, or what this proposal will do when I become mayor, it will actually thwart the homeless epidemic, stop it before it starts. I've already started this with 161 mothers with a program with the Bridge Project, and that is to ensure that women that have been in domestic violence situations and other situations of homelessness have an income, a free income, say it's on me, a free income to make sure that they stay in housing, permanent housing, so that they don't fall into the shelter system and that their children are taken care of. That is the program that I started. We are now working with 161 women, but I plan to build on that, and I plan to ensure that 21,000 children ages 0 to 5 and then 18 to 24, and then those who are aging out of foster care do not fall into the shelter system at all. So this program will guarantee income so that there will be housing stability. We have to start. We all want to build affordable housing. That's going to take time. But a guaranteed basic income program, it's real time, it's now, it's not looking for tomorrow, it happens right now. It happens to help pay your rent, it happens to pay for your clothes, happens to pay for it to make sure that children are taken care of in schools and not falling into the cycles of poverty and homelessness. Real time, right now.
Well, that's a program everyone can get behind. Congratulations, Speaker. Look, the rent's too damn high, to quote a former candidate for office, and you all know it, and we all feel it. But the way I would approach this is part of the reason that we are in this crisis is because our government has become minimalist in our thinking. We've always had a struggle with affordability, and the government sometimes has stepped up. Mayor LaGuardia built public housing, 2,200 buildings, right? That was to help people coming to our city, people who were here, people in tenements, and that was the housing that got you to the middle class. You start in public housing, you work your way up, and it worked for a very long time until the government decided to defund it. Second, we got to go back to thinking about how we build housing. I believe very strongly that we should take the vacant land that the city owns. We own it, we pay for it. It is our land. We should not give it to luxury developers to build luxury 80-story buildings with enclaves of housing for the very poor, nothing in between. Why don't we take this land and build Mitchell-Ama 2? Why don't we take this land and build the next generation of affordable housing? Look, I understand density, and I understand that we do need to build up housing, but government's job is to build from the bottom up. And we don't have to wait as long as it takes. We can actually do this now. Eric Adams stopped the housing program. Stopped it. And look what's happened. Record homelessness, people in the streets, some people dying in our subway stations. We need a mayor who knows how to get this done. I believe very strongly that a lot of the candidates here will be able to improve this situation. But it's going to take all of us united to solve this problem together. But we've got to get there because our city's at stake.
Well, the rent really is too damn high, but that's also because the wages are too damn low. New Yorkers have to work 2-3 jobs, have a side hustle in order to make ends meet. And we're spending less time with our kids, with our young people, and it really makes a difference even in our public safety and making sure that people are home for dinner. Imagine that notion. I'm New York State Senator Jessica Ramos, current chair of the Labor Committee in the New York State Senate. The fight for affordability of our city started many, many years ago. I know it's the buzzword this year, but New Yorkers have really been struggling. 1 in 4 are unable to provide for their basic essentials, and many more are rent burdened. I think that was why I raised the minimum wage and tied it to inflation a few years ago. And as your mayor, I want to be able to provide New Yorkers with one good job that should be enough to be able to provide for a high quality of life living here in New York City by tackling the crises that we're confronting right now, whether it's the affordable housing crisis, whether it's the child care crisis, whether it's the climate change crisis. There are so many opportunities untapped for us to provide opportunities for moms, dads, and people of all ages to be able to provide for themselves and their families. That, to me, is part of the reason we are seeing so much homelessness, especially among our children. I mean, there are 60,000 children living in our shelters right now. Many more are doubled up. But we have to also be able to tackle mental health crises, which we often talk about in terms of severe mental illness, but there are people with everyday struggles who also deserve the help that can be provided with wraparound services in supportive housing, which NYCHA actually really can be already, so that people can find better opportunities for themselves and really make sure that we're jump-starting the economy by putting our people first.
I appreciate those answers, candidates. I am just going to say I'm going to be a little more stringent about time on future answers just because we have a lot of questions to get through. Some of you need to leave by a certain time.
No, but what's the time limit?
We were supposed to go till 8 o'clock. 1 minute per, 1 minute, if possible. I can give a gentle nudge. But I'm wondering if a couple of people have to leave. I might bring some NYCHA questions up early so we can get some candidates a chance to ask those as well. But our next question is going to be Vanjie Gonzalez is going to ask, and it's still related to family homelessness and housing.
It's well known that New York City is experiencing a dire housing shortage, particularly when it comes to apartments with truly affordable rents. What would you do as mayor to address this?
You want us to go in the same order? Or?
Why don't we start, Mr. Stringer, you, I know, mentioned some criticism of the current mayor. How would you approach housing differently?
I only have a minute.
If possible, please.
So look, a couple of things. First of all, we actually have to walk and chew gum at the same time, and we're going to have a multi-pronged approach to fighting for affordability. First, and I've been working on this for literally 15 years. I've done these audits not only as controller, but as Manhattan Borough President and in the Assembly. NYCHA has too many damn vacancies. Thousands of vacancies for a whole lot of years. Apartments that could just be kind of fixed up, get people in them, but we don't do that. We hold them off, and that has to change. The second thing is we've got people who are living in dilapidated, dangerous housing. They're one step away from homelessness because you got to leave those apartments. There's rats, vermin. Your kids are living in dangerous situations. That has to stop. When I'm mayor, we're going to have the Robin Hood program. We're going to take these buildings away, eminent domain. I'll pay the landlords the fair market, and then we're going to transform that housing and create more low-income affordable housing. And the third thing we have to do, as I mentioned, the vacant properties, we can build tens of thousands of low-income housing units for people who need them the most. But here's one thing I do want to say. When I audited the homeless shelters and saw the dangerous conditions, 18,000 violations in the homeless shelters, when I walked into the homeless shelters, not at 9 o'clock in the morning with all the supervisors, but walked in with auditors and investigators at 2 o'clock in the morning, let me tell you something. If you have a choice between some of the shelters I saw and Rikers, you know where you want to be? Rikers. What does that say about our city? So we've got to do a number of things at the same time, because if we don't do one without the other, and I know we have a short amount of time tonight, we're not going to get people to where they have to be, and they're going to live in dangerous, squalid conditions, and not in this city, and it shouldn't be on our watch.
Shouldn't be.
I would love to ask Council Speaker Adams next to answer this question. I know obviously you were a big part of the negotiations around the Mayor's CityFHEPS plan. What would your approach to really a truly affordable housing be?
That's such a great question. And coming off of this proposal, which quite frankly, I had to take apart because it would have never passed the council the way that it was presented by the mayor. So we took it, we rejudged it, revamped it, and we call it City for All. And I made sure that NYCHA was included in this proposal going forward, so that what is to come, NYCHA residents will be included in that. So we're talking about $2 billion. No, not what will be, but what is going to happen, all right? Because this is the law. So NYCHA is included. I've made a provision for $2 billion to make sure that we have these that these buildings and these units are repaired, restored, and that they are preserved so that they can't be taken away. They can't go anyway, but they must be preserved and they must be fixed. The other thing that I made sure happened with regard to NYCHA is, as Scott just said, the vacancies, particularly for Section 9 housing, the vacancies are ridiculous. So what I did is to make sure that we have a provision of $2 million, that we have a unit reparation, or not, I don't want to use the word reparation, not with this one, but that's a whole other forum. But when we talk about restoration, reparations, you know, repairing the residences, that is what I made sure is baked into this proposal, City for All, also $2 million, to make sure that those vacant apartments are restored so that they don't have to be vacant anymore. And again, they are predominantly Section 9 vacancies. Why are they vacant? They're sitting there. People need places to live. People have to have places to live, and it makes no sense to me why this mayor has allowed this year after year after year for these apartments to just go down, down, and down. You have dignity. We know that you do. You have to be respected, and where you live has to be fixed. And under this City for All proposal, I have baked all of that in to make sure that that happens for your benefit.
Senator Ramos and then Senator Blake.
Yeah, you know, this city has spent billions of dollars over the last many years in tax breaks for big real estate, thinking that they're going to provide housing that is truly affordable for our communities. But trickle-down housing just doesn't work. And City Hall does have a responsibility to build housing in a steady rhythm in order to provide for those who don't have housing. And that's why I'm proposing what we used to do before Mitchell Lama, which was to leverage our taxpayer dollars and our union pension dollars, both public and private, to build housing like Co-op City, like Penn South, like Electchester in Queens, so that there's not just low-income rental opportunities, but modest equity home ownership opportunities. I mean, how many New Yorkers have busted their butt in this city for years and decades and want to be able to own a piece of their city so that they can start building that generational wealth that we've been promised for such a long time? I mean, we're the generation saddled with student debt, with so many other responsibilities that it actually gets in the way of a functioning economy. So I want us to spend and invest more money in actual New Yorkers who have been struggling to live in this city, and less in big real estate who just wants to take the opportunity for any land grab that presents itself. This is why we have to protect Chelsea houses not too far away from here. This is why we have to keep a close eye at what's happening in the Brooklyn Marine Terminal. That can be a huge land grab for Related. We have to have our eyes on the prize and really take advantage of the 1,000 lots that we have, protect the current NYCHA housing stock and affordable housing stock with a rent freeze for rent stabilized and rent controlled tenants. That is a must. And we have to really be able to open up its 5,000 apartments that NYCHA has warehoused right now. And they're warehoused because they are covered in mold, because they have lead paint, because they need lots of repairs. And by the way, NYCHA actually testified that it's taking 400 days to repair one apartment in NYCHA. Meanwhile, you talk to the building trades and they'll tell you that they can convert an office building to a residential building in 18 to 24 months. It's a boondoggle. It's an abuse of the taxpayers of New York, and we have to get that right. It's about management and making sure that repairs are done right the first time, hopefully by employing NYCHA residents themselves.
So to your question, we have to build more truly affordable housing to actually address the crisis at hand. There's not enough truly affordable housing for New Yorkers. That was to your question here, okay? To do that, the data has shown that for a family with children of 2, you have to have at least $67 per hour at a minimum. We know that's not happening across the city. You'll have a lot of people talk about getting to minimum wage. That's not enough. The reason why I was the first person to talk about guaranteed income, to go beyond not just children, but to anyone below the poverty line, will address that actual issue. Because the policies that you have heard people talk through are actually not making it in a relative way. You have housing, but you don't have enough money to pay for said housing, and then you have insufficient actual units to actually have truly affordable housing. So when we talk through building of more units, it's wonderful to build more units, but if you can't afford it, then what is the point? So very specifically, I don't believe that a developer nor a landlord should be able to keep incentives from the city if they have not actually hit what they said they were going to do when it came to low and middle income housing. Why are you allowing someone to profit if they're actually not addressing the issue? Second, in order to pay for this, you can build out this housing by having a vacant apartment tax for the individuals who do not have a primary residence in New York. By doing that, you can generate $400 to $500 million just by doing that alone. Moreover, you can also pay for this by looking at funding that could come for individuals who are, again, needing to come back into our cities who actually can't afford it. You have a lot of folks working in New York, but they're living in Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania because they can't afford to be here right now. So to the question, the way we fix the issue is by actually building out middle-class, working-class housing for every person in this room. Simultaneously, when we talk about what's going on with NYCHA, which was an extension of the question, the same way we utilize technology to order your food or book a flight or do other things, we should be able to use technology to be tracking constituent issues that you have within NYCHA to be able to hold people accountable. If you actually want to fix things at scale at NYCHA, a lot of people working at NYCHA need to go to jail right now, because they have not been actually helping you in concrete ways around the affordable housing crisis, because that was the question that you asked. How do we actually address this here? You do this by having a local median income, by building truly affordable housing, and for the entities that are not doing it, taking away their tax incentives that they don't deserve.
definitely going to get to the NYCHA questions and NYCHA repairs shortly. I'm going to move some of those questions up, but I would love to invite Khadijah back up to ask.
A state controller audited last year found that CityFHEPS voucher holders, oh, sorry if you couldn't hear me. A state controller audited last year that the CityFHEPS voucher holders on average of 10 months to move into permanent housing after receiving vouchers, time they often spent in shelters. How will you reduce this time for the people, and how do you solve that problem?
I would love to hear each of your pitches in 1 minute or less of how you would fix CityFHEPS and move more homeless New Yorkers who have vouchers out of the shelter system into permanent housing. Maybe we go this way. Jessica Ramos, would you like to start us off?
New York City has to play matchmaker. It's the same issue we have with Section 8 vouchers. A lot of people need them, and it so far has been a great program, unless that changes under the current federal administration, of course. But we have to make sure that we're actually expanding the program to ensure that people don't fall off the fiscal cliff and actually qualify and are eligible for this. But the city really should be the linchpin between those who are receiving the vouchers and the landlords who take them, because landlords actually have a great opportunity to work with the city and the government to make sure that they are keeping their apartments full and not vacant, but nobody really is available to connect one with the other. That is the biggest complaint that I have heard from constituents. Housing remains the #1 issue. People call my office, and we try to help everybody apply for the housing lottery. But you know, what an indictment on our society that we have to depend on a lottery to see whether or not we qualify for housing in the richest city in the world. It's a damn shame, and this is why it is necessary to increase our supply of apartments and make sure that people actually can afford to live in this city.
Mr. Stringer?
Well, shout out to the City Council
Thank
for...
Thank you.
Hey, I know all about ranked choice voting.
Ranked choice voting, man. I'm telling you, ranked choice voting. Get those second and third choices right now.
You don't think we do business here, no. But shout out to the City Council, because they stared down this mayor on something that was so basic and easy, this should never have been the fight.
Ever.
What we should have spent time on, and what we must spend time on, is reconstituting this mayoral administration to actually align when good things happen to get people to where they have to be. This is true with the voucher program. It was true when the migrants came here and the federal government had to be calling to do basic paperwork to help people. Remember that? That was the outrage about the lack of government ability to help individuals. And that is something that we have to do. And look, part of what my experience in government over the last more decades that I'm going to admit to tonight tells me is these agencies are broken.
Yes.
And we have to fix it. And it's not going to be an easy journey, because people have been leaving city government because they don't want to work in a place where they don't feel valued, and we have to change that. We also have to make sure that when it comes to housing, the people who need these vouchers are people who are dealing with serious issues. Domestic violence, kids, people who are struggling with all kinds of issues, especially no money and a real fear of being in the streets. And people who have those issues do not have a computer, right, on the stoop or in front of the church or the synagogue. They don't have the ability to call somebody. Look, you know, I would hate to be alone in my life and have to use a computer to navigate the Department of Education for my kids. I would say, God help me. And that's not a big problem, but this is. So we need a government that's going to take, when good things happen, the ability to actually help people manage their cases, get them to the landlords, stare the landlords down when they think that they think we're playing them. We're not. We're helping them. They got to help us too. And that's how we reorient people to the vouchers.
And I'd like to put pass this next to Speaker Adams. I know obviously the City Council passed a package of bills in 2023 to expand CityFHEPS, that there's been a stalemate with the mayoral administration to implement those bills. But beyond that, we all know that even getting a voucher is not a guarantee to finding a home, right? So how would your administration address the issues with using those vouchers and the difficulties and the length of time?
Yeah, I think the story is very well connected here, and thank you, Scott, for highlighting the fact that under my leadership, this city council passed a law. And what the mayor did was vetoed the law when it came to CityFHEPS vouchers. That law was to expand it, to make sure that people could stay in their apartments, stay in their homes, to make sure that we could reduce and eliminate evictions because of this vital program. And the mayor vetoed that. That's saying that he doesn't really believe in expanding houses or keeping people in homes at all. If this is the proof in the pudding, then he is really showing us all what he is really about, and that is staying status quo, which is not acceptable. And when I become mayor, I'm saying that expanding on work that I'm already doing, work that I have already done, expanding on this work. CityFHEPS vouchers, we had to override a veto with a supermajority in the city council to make sure that this mayor could not get away with the veto. You know what he did next? He sued us. That is how much contempt this mayor has for actually standing by the most vulnerable citizens in this city when the city council are the most proponents of your benefit. So what we need to do is connect the dots. We're talking about apartments that are vacant that need to be repaired. Those are homes that can be used very well when it comes to the CityFHEPS voucher. There are also, there's supportive housing. There are buildings just sitting around, that are just not being used for anything. So we've got stock. Stock has just not been opened. So as mayor, all this stuff becomes open. The voucher program, the CityFHEPS vouchers become viable. The landlord's feet will be held to the fire to make sure that they are accepted and used the way that they were built to be done. So I plan to do this when I'm mayor. Once again, expand on the work that I'm already doing. Everybody deserves to be in a home. Everybody deserves to feel safe. And that will be my job. I want you to hold me accountable for that.
Too often what is happening is you have landlords and too many people across this city who think it's okay to discriminate against who they believe is not good enough. That's why, again, to the question, this is still happening. You have the continuation of isms, the racism, the sexism, the institutionalized poverty, all these are intertwined as to why it's not happening. And so we can't continue to talk about what hasn't occurred. It is, what will you do? When I am mayor, for an entity that is not implementing these vouchers, rescind their licenses, rescind their ability to hold on to properties, rescind the ability of them having financial protections. I guarantee when someone quickly has financial accountability, they'll get their mind right. And what we are continuing to see here is that things would change, but there's no accountability on those that are receiving it. That is the problem that is happening. Go a step further. Nonprofit reimbursement is a joke in this city, over and over again. You have contracts that have been approved, money is there, and no one can rationally tell you why they're not being paid on time. But they'll just say it's a problem. I have said, when I am mayor, within the first 100 days, all outstanding contracts, unless there is a legal reason why not, will be paid out. Because it's not a question on do we have the money. The money is there. It is incompetence, lack of accountability, not the willingness to actually take people seriously in that way. Now, how do I know this? Because my main legislation in Albany was the prompt pay bill, where we paid businesses within 15 days instead of 30 days to make it very clear. But we added within it language. If there is a legal, justifiable reason why that contract can be executed upon, that's a different case. But that is not the scenario here. What you're having here are landlords and entities who are believing you are not good enough. I would rather hold on and warehouse what is happening because eventually someone will break. That is not the vision I will have when I'm your mayor. You need someone who will hold people accountable, and again, rescind the ability of people who have not been fighting for you to continue to hold on to things they don't deserve.
And our next question, and I would love, we're going to switch to NYCHA because I know some folks have to leave early, but I would love very quickly for our 3 remaining candidates to touch on that issue of late contract payments. As you all know, sorry, I'm stealing your question a little bit, but it seems like a good segue. Late contract payments are causing a lot of issues in the family homelessness sector with nonprofits unable to pay staff, the possibility of shelters needing to close. I would love if you guys, like 30 seconds or less, could say any kind of ideas for.
I'll be really quick.
That would be great.
I got a bill for that. It's in the works, where the city will be held accountable. So the administration can no longer get away with holding contracts up and holding nonprofits' money up. That trickles down and affects everyday people. So I got a bill for that.
So I have news. I got a bill for that too.
Breaking news tonight.
In the state Senate, I carry the bill to create a wage board for our human services workers so that they can negotiate directly with the state on these contracts. But look, ultimately, the procurement process, the contracting process needs a lot of reform. And quite frankly, if the city is late with a payment, it should have to pay interest to the organization because the cost of living has increased by then. And that happens way too often, largely because our recontracting starts very late in the process. It should start a year earlier at the very least, making sure that there isn't an interruption in services and that there isn't an interruption in employment for the people who are doing God's work in helping others secure the services and the housing that they need. Thank you to all the human services employees who might be here.
I don't have a bill for it, but I had the skill to pay the bills when I was controller. And I will tell you, we blew up this procurement fight because people were coming to the controller's office saying to me, why aren't you paying these contracts? Not-for-profits, homeless shelters, people with city contracts. My heart sank. I said, I pride myself on competence, right? I called the entire office in. I said, we're not paying people? And they said, we're not getting the contracts. The agencies, mayor's office of contracts, were not doing the contracts in a timely fashion. And that not only hurt the not-for-profits, but when you cannot have oversight and evaluate the contract, that's when fraud happens. That's why during COVID, de Blasio said to me, you know what? I like this arrangement of emergency contracts. I really don't want you to see anything anymore. And I said, yeah, but the charter says that I got to review it just in case you gave a contract to one of your donors. We should know that, and that kind of thing. And then I turned around and sued him so that we would have that authority. This is actually not a complicated fix. A mayor has to invest in the procurement officers within the city agencies. Many of these procurement officers don't even exist anymore, and no one wants to invest in training those officers because it doesn't get you, it doesn't get you newspapers. It's not a Twitter post. It's not a press conference. But the truth is, this is the hard work of government. You got to build within agencies the ability to have procurement officers. And by the way, we also said to the mayor, you should also ensure that you have a chief diversity officer to make sure that all contracts get certified and people of all different backgrounds can compete and participate.
Thank you. Thank you all for that. And we're going to get to some NYCHA questions now because I know that we're in a bit of a time crunch and some candidates have to depart a little bit early. So I'd love to invite Wendy up to ask our first question about NYCHA.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The Housing Authority has been accused of fostering a culture of corruption, from falsified lead paint inspections to the arrest last year of dozens of NYCHA employees who allegedly took bribes for awarding small repairs contracts. How would your administration address this, and what would you do to restore the trust of tenants?
Welcome to New York City Comptroller Brad Lander. We appreciate you joining us. You're just in time for our switch to NYCHA questions. Would you like to kick us off with this question about corruption and transparency and rooting out corruption at NYCHA and restoring the trust of tenants? Did you hear that full question?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you all for doing this really important forum. We're having a lot of forums these days, but we haven't had one on family homelessness and NYCHA, so I'm glad that you guys organized it. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to be late, but I'm honored to be here. So we looked at this in the Comptroller's office to audit what is going on. I convened a NYCHA resident audit committee to ask residents of public housing, what do you want us to look at? We had done a number of other audits, but we thought, let's ask NYCHA residents what they want. And they said, please look at the repair vendors that come into our homes, because half the time they're supposed to remove mold or replace a broken stove. Either they don't show up, they make an inconvenient appointment time and use that as an excuse to cancel, or they do half the work or none of the work, and yet they still seem to get paid. They get hired by somebody else down, to do another job down the hall. What gives? We did the audit, and sure enough, 44% of the invoices we looked at, no documentation the work was ever done, and no oversight or evaluation of vendors. So what we came up with is a thing we call Yelp for NYCHA repairs. So when I'm mayor, we've got this simple app, and when a vendor is supposed to have done work in a tenant's apartment in NYCHA, before they get paid, the resident will get a text or an email with some help in language access if they need it, and just what do you do with your Uber or your Yelp review? Give a simple 1 to 5. They made an appointment. They came on time. They did the work. If they didn't do the work, we're not going to pay them. Very quickly, we'll have vendor scorecards that show which NYCHA vendors did the work and should be hired again, and which did not, and we will not hire them again. And we'll make better use of taxpayer dollars, we'll deliver services to vendors, and we'll restore resident trust because they'll see it's their voice that actually matters in managing NYCHA.
Senator Ramos, what do you think about contractors, corruption?
Well, I think that any of the NYCHA officials who have engaged in corruption, first and foremost, deserve to lose their job. And should be thoroughly investigated and held accountable for their wrongdoing. There should be a zero tolerance for corruption and taking advantage of the system, and especially vulnerable New Yorkers. So we want to make sure that our tenant councils are much more empowered and active in helping through this decision making. But I agree with the use of technology, not only in this and so many other instances of city government, but because really there should be a public dashboard that allows you to access where your ticket is along the way towards lastable and sustainable repairs to your apartments. We need to remediate any lead paint that is still in any apartment. We need to make sure that we are removing mold responsibly so that it doesn't come up again. That is a constant complaint that I hear, especially when I used to represent Woodside Houses. It's really unfortunate that although we can pay prevailing wage, that we can hire union workers, actually right now we're not doing so. So hiring the painters union, for example, to actually do it responsibly when we already know that those contractors are functioning and that there is an accountability measure is a great way to make sure that the work is done right, and that hopefully, again, we're able to remediate and repair those existing 5,000 apartments that are warehoused so that we can open up the wait list again, because there's 200,000 New Yorkers on it.
Yep.
So when I was controller, I audited NYCHA like 19 times, and like almost every it got to be like every 2 months, and audits, as the controller knows, you don't do them in 6 weeks. It takes 18 months to really do a serious audit. So we did 19 of them. And this is this was my conclusion when at the conclusion of all those audits. The system structurally doesn't work. And the way we abate lead paint doesn't work because we have two agencies that don't share data. The Department of Health, right, and NYCHA. They're two ships in the night. And this is true with a lot of the agencies that interact with NYCHA. So when you audit NYCHA, no surprise, the repairs aren't done on time. Work doesn't get done. We see the systemic corruption. But NYCHA does not operate or should not operate on an island unto itself. There are other agencies that be doing the checks and balances. First, it has to start with the mayor at City Hall. We know for a fact that NYCHA is a city. It's a city within a city. And we would not manage our city the way we manage NYCHA. And we don't give tenants a voice. We say, take RAD, take the trust, take what we'll give you, and you're supposed to sit back and say, yeah, but what about me? And we have to change that culture too. We need to start listening to the residents. We need to start thinking about how we have mismanaged not just NYCHA, but the agencies that encompass NYCHA, which is a lot of our government.
First of all, I apologize for having to leave, but I'm so glad that I get to answer this question or give a little bit more perspective. I absolutely agree with the technology piece of this. New York in general, our city is in need of a technology upgrade in the worst way. NYCHA happens to have been caught up in this. The system is horrible. It is in the dark ages and needs to be brought up to speed, up to snuff. As was said, we need a dashboard to track this stuff. It was always in the back of my head, there's a reason why my NYCHA residents are not getting the services that they need and deserve. I can't just stand up, and hold rallies every weekend, and we're out there and we're doing what we need to do as far as the voices for our constituents and with our constituents out there. But there is such a systemic ugliness about all of this. This is deeply rooted, and this is rooted, again, in what we all know is racism, classism, all of the isms that we know that are there to harm individuals and to keep individuals in certain places so that there is no room to move. When we talk about deplorable conditions of mold that can conceivably kill people, harm children, cause brain damage to our kids, and to know that people are actually sitting back and profiting off of that, that is one of the most despicable things that you can ever think of in life. So we need to transform this system. We need to bring NYCHA up to date when it comes to technology and service. You need real customer service when it comes to NYCHA. And you are customers of the system. You are customers, and you are owed that respect, that dignity that I keep on talking about to my tenants, my tenant associations, and my leaders. There will be such a change when I am mayor. I just can't wait. I just can't wait. This again, I take it to heart. I take it very, very personally. Very, very personally. We are in need of a technology upgrade. I think that this was done on purpose. Just me. Just me, I could be out of bounds, but I think that this is purposefully done to our NYCHA residents because they know that you really can't do anything about it because the system's gotcha. So as mayor, it's going to be up to me to help to unravel that gotcha. We've got to get up to speed with technology, and we have to bring to you the dignity that you deserve.
It is.
Thank you, Speaker Adams, for joining us. Appreciate it.
Let me be very clear that my forthcoming comments are not about the people that are working in NYCHA that are doing the right things and standing up for the right things. But let's be clear to the question. People have to be held accountable for New Yorkers living in lead and with mold and with broken elevators, wondering why you don't have community centers. And I appreciated that the question said allegedly, because that's what you have to do for the good legal of it, but let's be clear. The data was clear. Bribes were going down. Folks were breaking the law. And we're doing this, I just want to make sure we internalize the humanity of it. They were doing this while you weren't getting proper living conditions. Right? And so, I've said from the beginning of this race, when I am mayor, technology for good has to be a part of this. We have to be able to, in real time, track what is the actual request you have been requesting for a long period of time, give a legitimate reason why it's not being addressed. We're wondering why people are not paying back on a lot of their outstanding back rent. Well, they're just like, well, hell, you haven't fixed shit. I'm a Jamaican, I get real about that. Is that all right, you know? So folks are just trying to understand, like, you're not giving me dignity right now. But then you're wondering why I have this frustration here. Second, to the question. Identify the individuals. Does she need water? Does she need water? She all right? Yeah. Okay. Identify the individuals who have been the culprits of this. Why do they still have jobs? Doesn't make any logical sense that you know an individual did not do what they were supposed to be doing, but yet they're still working in these jobs in the midst of continual investigations over and over again. But then lastly is, what do we do that's different? And what has to happen differently is for us to take the funds that we have within our reserves, as well as a vacant apartment tax, to pay for you to have the repairs that you need immediately. That is how you restore trust. You restore trust by fixing the problem and by acknowledging that bad has happened. And too often, city officials are unwilling to say, I messed this up, I didn't do this properly, I didn't do this fast enough. A true leader is willing to acknowledge that. I represented the largest concentration of NYCHA when I was in the assembly. And during COVID, I often had to see the challenges that were happening. We were the ones that brought in World Central Kitchen to feed New Yorkers. We were the ones that helped people to get opportunities that they weren't having because the city wasn't doing it. So when all these folks are talking about what they're going to do for you as mayor, ask them what have they done when they had a chance.
I would love to invite Tarch up to ask a question.
Okay, good evening, everybody. NYCHA has increasingly turned to alternative funding options, citing the federal government's chronic underfunding of Section 9. This includes through the newly formed Public Housing Preservation Trust, as well as PACT, which brings in private operators to manage campuses. Where do you stand on these options, and how would your administration approach funding repairs at NYCHA? Thank you.
I know this is a meaty one, so I will allow slight allowances over 1 minute, but let's start with you, Comptroller Lander. What are your thoughts on the various funding models, PACT, Preservation Trust, Section 9, and how would your administration approach repairs at NYCHA and drumming up the money for that?
So one of the things I was proudest of doing as a city council member was winning the funding for the comprehensive modernization at Wyckoff Gardens and Gowanus houses while it remained Section 9 traditional public housing through the Gowanus rezoning. There was an opportunity to build a lot more new affordable housing, but residents said, whoa, we can't do that unless we also are making sure that the public housing residents who are there get their homes repaired, and we delivered it. 8,000 new homes, 3,000 genuinely affordable for low-income and working-class people, and 1,500 public housing comprehensive modernization units. So that's what I did as city council member. Now, NYCHA's got a backlog of $80 billion of repairs, and we need all the pathways that we can possibly find to renovation. The choice should be up to the resident. So what's clear to me is, before there's any change in management or government, a majority of residents of that development, not just should vote, but should vote for any change before it happens. So not just like a quorum of 51% and then 51% of that. 51% of residents should vote. And if they choose with clear information, the trust, if they choose with clear information, infill, if they choose with clear information, PACT, if they choose not to do that and stay Section 9, then we should heed the voice of the residents while leaving all options on the table.
Thank you. I know that Mr. Blake and Mr. Stringer have to head out, so we're going to give them a chance to both answer this question, and then we'll have
Well, I do agree with tenant's choice, tenant input, and you should decide the direction that you want to go, in part because people don't realize that you are the ones who invested in NYCHA with sweat equity. You made these developments valuable. Why do you think they want to privatize? It's because of you. So congratulations on doing a good job for the community. The question, though, is what is government going to do to protect you? And that is something I will promise you as mayor of New York City. But look, we do have at least a $40 billion to $80 billion issue in terms of the lack of NYCHA investment. It is finally caught up with us. It's not just Trump. This has been going back since the 1980s during Reaganomics, so should be no surprise to longtime residents. We have to figure out and be creative about our approach to finding new investment, especially when we're dealing with a federal government that is going to do everything it can to bring NYCHA down. Look, when I was controller, I had one vote on the Battery Park City Authority. The mayor had a vote, Mayor de Blasio. Governor Cuomo, if you remember him, had a vote in this.
I'm trying to forget it.
In this. And I just want to let you know what a good negotiator I was. I said, why don't we take Battery Park City surplus and give it and invest it in NYCHA, right? Could be $100 million. So it needed 3 votes, unanimous. So I call up de Blasio and say, if you and I agree, we can get Cuomo, we can do this really big thing. De Blasio goes, I don't know, it's complicated, I got to fight with Cuomo, whatever. Fine. I called Cuomo and said, Cuomo, if you and I come out for this, you're going to embarrass de Blasio. He goes, I'm in it. I just want you to know, if I'm mayor, how I can negotiate with these folks. But let me just say, because I do have to go, I want to leave on a high note. You know, when I was growing up in Washington Heights, I saw the potential for what NYCHA families can be. Because a lot of us kids hung out in PS 152 in the schoolyard, right next to Dyckman projects. And for us, it was open space. It was playgrounds. It was our ability to look at different people and different cultures and see the diversity of our city, even back when I was growing up. And today, we've lost that. The worst audit I ever did, and I couldn't believe that this was happening, even with all of NYCHA's economic problems, when we did the audit to the playgrounds, and we saw the jagged edges of the swings and the slides, and the dilapidated, dangerous conditions of these wonderful playgrounds that I grew up in, and to see it all fall down, and NYCHA could not even have the ability to fix the playgrounds. And I said, just fix the playgrounds. I won't bother you for a month, just fix the playgrounds. And they couldn't do it. We need a mayor who's going to do it, who has the skills and the ability to do it. We need a mayoralty that really understands how government works. I hope you'll consider my candidacy. If I'm not your number 1, in the spirit of ranked choice with everybody, no less than number 2. I got to go.
And Mr. Blake, your thoughts on the different funding models?
We are in a funding crisis when it comes to NYCHA because for decades, Democrats, Republicans, Independents who had power did not actually fund NYCHA the way that we should have, which has put us in the position that we're in right now, where now tenants are being forced to have to decide, do you get repairs immediately and give up your power? So when we talk through, yes, we have to find more ways for revenue. I hear that and I get that, but it must be the tenant's decision, not a bureaucrat of a name that you can't see. We can't have a scenario where privatization is happening and you actually don't have the ability or means to make these decisions on your own on what you actually want. If you don't want it, don't move forward with that. But go a step further. We are talking about a $113 billion budget in the city. We're talking about essentially a $200 billion budget in the state. You're not going to get all the funds immediately, but it's really hard for us to continue to say that we can't find more money in budgets of that size to help New Yorkers. Maybe if we didn't have $1.4 billion that was spent on NYPD overtime and a corruption scandal, we would have some changes, right? Maybe if we actually had a true vacant apartment tax. Maybe if we took the steps to ensure that the waste and the nonsense that is happening would actually go to paying for New Yorkers, you would not be in this mess right now. So again, this goes back to a very fundamental question. You've had people who are running, who have had the ability to fix this, and they haven't. It is time for a new generation of leadership to do this, and to do this differently. And we'll actually be real with you on how we pay for this and doing it in a consistent way. The reason why I jumped in the race at the end of November, and I'm using this as my close, got no way up to go, is that I wanted to avoid this mess as much as possible and did everything humanly possible to make sure that we tried to have Kamala Harris instead of Donald Trump. So we weren't in the situation right now, right? So to your question, empowering you so that you have this control, finding more revenue to make sure you're empowered in that regard so that you are not losing the control that you deserve. My entire vision around our program, which is called Welcome Home, is on our website at blake4nyc.com. I asked to be your first choice. If I'm not, I want to be your second choice. My name is Michael Blake, and I hope to be your mayor. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. And now we'll get to hear more. I know we're supposed to close at 8 o'clock, so I've got some great questions from the audience, but I know, Senator Ramos, you didn't get a chance to answer about the different funding models. You brought up Fulton and Elliott Chelsea earlier. Sounds like you have a strong opinion on that, so I'd love to hear from you what you think of these various plans.
Yeah, I don't believe that we should be doing anything that displaces New Yorkers. It's that plain and simple. And as a big believer in a small d democracy, I, as your mayor, will definitely respect the wishes of NYCHA tenants. But I'll tell you, if I was a NYCHA tenant, I wouldn't want to create any risk of increased rent prices, which private management can lead to. So I want to make sure that at City Hall, we are empowering and educating tenants about the pros and cons of all of the different options that we have so that we can make the best possible choice together.
We have about 15 minutes left. I think I'd love to ask one more NYCHA question and then do a couple from the audience, because you guys put some really great questions on these cards. And thank you to all of our question askers. I know I went a little off script on the order. I thought we'd had to move things a little bit faster. But one thing I would like to ask is particularly about the idea of infill building on NYCHA property. I know that's part of the plan for the Fulton and Elliott Chelsea's houses is to, well, demolish and rebuild those homes, but also to build other apartments, both affordable and market rate, on that campus. I would love to hear from both of you how you feel about sort of infill construction on NYCHA property.
Who goes first?
There's only two of you, so Comptroller Lander, would you like to go first?
Yes, we have.
That's so funny. I am not a fan of infills. I don't think that we should be leveraging the public land that we have in order to build more market rate apartments when just a few blocks away from here, Hudson Yards sits empty and actually has a ton of market rate apartments available. It's the same story that we have in Queens, in Long Island City. I think there are opportunities to perhaps explore commercial spaces and perhaps even help NYCHA tenants become entrepreneurs themselves and figure out how to build better commerce that can lead to greater public safety for our NYCHA campuses. I think there are a lot of other tools that exist outside of the current box that doesn't necessarily need to lead to more displacement and evictions of New Yorkers who have called home for so many years, so many generations, and would only exacerbate the actual current homeless issue that we have, which is the biggest crisis of our time.
This is where I think, this is where I think a majority vote of residents and like resident-led democracy, like I tried to model with that NYCHA resident audit committee, is how we ought to handle things. Because if residents know a majority of the residents of this development have to vote for a plan before it's going to happen, then you'll get creative thinking that actually tries to say to the residents, okay, here's something that you might find genuinely appealing. So if there is a room on a campus that has a lot of seniors in those buildings, and what a developer proposes is, first, we're going to put up a brand new building that is built for seniors with, like modern facility, good elevator. It'll be a place that you'll be excited to live. That then looks at building, protects everybody in that development, that is appealing to the folks who are living there because it speaks to their needs, that generates more affordable housing over the long term, that stays permanently affordable, and then it's still up to residents. Like, I'm not pitching you on it, I'm just describing something that if then a majority of the residents of that development say, we vote for that. And again, a real vote, not 51% vote and 51% of them, so it's only 26%, a majority of the residents who live there then I think that will be like a renewing of meaningful democracy. I was proud to help bring participatory budgeting to New York City, give people some real votes over how capital dollars get spent. So those are the circumstances under which I could support an infill proposal, is with the support of the residents who live there. I agree with Jessica that real clear information is necessary. So the second audit we did from the NYCHA Resident Audit Committee was of eviction rates in RAD PACT, so people would be able to see them in black and white and understand what might happen if they choose that option. So you have all the information you need. One other form of a certain kind of infill, though, that I do want to share with you, even though it's not NYCHA, is my most ambitious part of my affordable housing plan. How many city-owned municipal golf courses do you think there are in New York City? Anyone have a guess? 2? Any other guesses? 5? How many do you think we need? 1. There are 12 municipal golf courses, city-owned golf courses in the 5 boroughs, 2,500 acres. So there'll still be 8 when we take 4 of them and build new neighborhoods full of Mitchell-Lama-style development, 50,000 affordable homes for New Yorkers to rent and own, with lots of great new parks and open space. We need to be ambitious and creative, and it has to be driven by resident voice and vision.
So now we're going to jump around from both topics because we have some great questions from the audience. If you guys are good till 8? Okay, great. The best way to end homelessness is to prevent it. How will you enhance New York City's homeless eviction prevention efforts, particularly home base?
Housing first.
Might not be familiar with that term.
Right now, we make human beings jump through all sorts of hoops in order to somehow one day, please, 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 if somebody has mercy, they will get a housing unit. And frankly, if we give a person a housing unit first and provide the wraparound services they need, whether it's mental health services, whether it's workforce development, whether it's both, anything else, we know that there is a greater likelihood that that person is going to be out of homelessness once and for all. And that's where the city holds a deep responsibility in giving New Yorkers equal opportunity and again, making sure that there is one good job available. I'm running on a youth jobs guarantee. I want the summer youth employment program to be year-round. It is worth the investment to make sure that young people from the ages of 16 to 24 actually have an opportunity to find themselves and figure out earlier in life and where their talent lies, and hopefully that leads to greater job satisfaction in the future. Not to mention that if we still have Social Security around, because we are going to defend it, right? It's not an entitlement, it's a benefit. We want to make sure that everybody is positioned to have a dignified retirement. And we shouldn't have to say that just because we come from a working class black and brown community, that somehow those things are not for us. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. They always have been. We are the economic backbone of this city, and it's about time that City Hall recognizes that. That's why, as your mayor, I want to be able to provide New Yorkers with the opportunity to have one good job so that we are tackling the climate crisis, we're tackling the affordable housing crisis, we're tackling climate change and so many of the other things that lie before us, so that we have an economy that's based on the people and not the billionaires that think this city is their playground.
Home Base is the program that's designed to help prevent homelessness, so you don't have to get somebody a new home if you can help them avoid becoming homeless in the first place. But there's 2 ways I really want to enhance it. First, right now, you sort of have to go to it. You have to know to go to Home Base to try to get help there. But there's a lot of ways we could identify families who need those supports earlier. So I'll give just one example. We have a real spike in absenteeism in our public schools. Coming out of the pandemic, a lot more kids. There's chronic absenteeism in families that are facing a lot of stress and challenges. They're often the same families that are seeing housing stress and at risk of homelessness. So I want to make sure, and right now it's nobody's job to go to those families because, like, you know, that's not, the teacher's got all the other kids in the classroom, and we don't have enough social workers and guidance counselors in our public schools. I'm the son of a elementary school public school guidance counselor. So I want to make sure that there's social workers who are going to see families who have a kid who's been absent a lot from school, and they're going to discover a lot of challenges. Some of those challenges are going to be housing stresses, and you can bring home base to that family, try to help them get the CityFHEPS voucher, try to help them make sure they're able to stay in their home, get that kid back in school. And then second, when someone is facing eviction, the best way to keep them from being evicted is a lawyer. That is why we passed, and I was proud to be a co-sponsor of the legislation guaranteeing right to counsel, which means if you are low income or working class and you're facing eviction from your home, New York City is supposed to assign you an attorney to defend you. And when that happens, your chances go dramatically up of keeping your home. We got up to 2/3 of the eligible families getting lawyers last term, but now under Eric Adams, who has essentially defunded this program, it went down below half, and now it's down at 1/3, which means 2/3 of low-income tenants facing eviction in New York City are being denied the right to counsel that they are supposed to have by law. And I will make sure, when I say in my housing plan that I will be declaring a state of emergency on day one, part of what that'll let us do is cut through the procurement red tape so we can get enough lawyers and guarantee every single tenant who is low income and working class and facing eviction a lawyer so that they are far less likely to be evicted from their home.
I'm going to try and squeeze like 2 more in here, if you guys are okay with that. One of the wrapping up a NYCHA question. What will your administration do to ensure economic opportunities for NYCHA tenants, including through the Section 3 program, which, if I'm familiar with it, is I think when there's contract work at NYCHA, right? Like if there's repair work going on, a certain amount of those jobs should be going to local residents. So beyond Section 3 and beyond. Would you like to go first, Ms. Ramos?
Sure, yeah. So Section 3, let's be clear, is a federal requirement. It's not like an option. It's a part of the law. And, you know, Section 3, I can't remember which year of the National Housing Act, public housing authorities have a requirement to maximize opportunities for public housing residents to get jobs and contracting opportunities for the work that takes place in their homes. And of course, often that's in a new developing field right now. We need to be doing climate modernization and installing solar panels and weatherizing buildings. So these are skills that you not only can use to do the work in your building, but that are good jobs to have all around New York City. And NYCHA has really repeatedly failed to deliver on the promise of Section 3. You need to match workforce development to give people the training with commitments to get people hired on those jobs. There's some great organizations doing amazing work in NYCHA, like Green City Force and other folks who are providing that training, so I want to scale that up. Before I was elected to office, I ran the Fifth Avenue Committee, which has a job training program called Brooklyn Workforce Innovations that trains people in cabinet making, in commercial driving, in network cable installation, in housing applications. So we can be scaling up our workforce development and enforcing Section 3 requirements that will deliver the good jobs, the kinds of good jobs that Senator Ramos is talking about, with the money that we're already spending right on NYCHA campuses.
Well, the best construction training is state certified training offered by the construction unions. And the reason I say that is because it's the best way to guarantee that every worker will return whole every night back to their family, because construction is actually the most dangerous job in New York City right now, and it has been for a while. But we're going to need a lot of construction workers in order to get where we're going on climate change and in terms of affordable housing. I think we should be able to help the trades have training centers on many of the actual housing complexes, like Queensbridge, which is the biggest, so that folks don't have to travel too far to actually access those opportunities to guarantee job placement. I've been talking about having one good job all night. I feel like I've sprinkled it throughout lots of the questions, but I do want to add a particular group of people, and that's those who are re-entering our society and our economy after having paid their debt to society. We don't think enough about the way we should be expanding mental health courts to provide with actual programs programming for those who have been struggling, sometimes with mild, sometimes with severe mental illness, but who certainly can one day be ready to get back on their feet. And NYCHA can be a place where there is workforce opportunities so that we can start building that equity that every single New Yorker deserves and that so many of us have been denied for such a long time, especially in the face of you-know-who in the White House, who's going to start throwing every single possible funding cut at us, whether it's Title I funding for our students with disabilities in public schools, whether it's SNAP benefits, so even urban agriculture on our NYCHA complexes can be an opportunity for us to provide for cheaper groceries and employ people to actually help build their communities. I think there is a lot to do. What we've been missing is creativity and really seeing investment in New Yorkers as our path forward to a healthy economy.
So I think this is probably going to be our last question. Thank you for everyone who submitted some questions on the cards. They're really great. This is really about folks after they leave the shelter system. Aftercare services, as it's known, help provide formerly homeless families with a smooth transition into permanent housing. How will you, as mayor, work to prevent families from returning to shelter after they leave?
We should be working to make shelters obsolete. We are wasting so many taxpayer dollars in our shelters when really they should be transitioning into supportive housing units so that we are helping people and again providing housing first for New Yorkers so that we can provide the services that they need to get back on their feet. Look, I know that shelters are well-meaning. I know that we've had this system now for a good while, but it clearly is not leading to more New Yorkers having permanent housing over their, a permanent roof over their heads. So clearly, we've been investing in the wrong system. And really in a city that is limited in when it comes to land as a resource. We want to be able to get our buck's worth and actually help people get back on their feet, not keep the same contracts going and the same boondoggles going, so that CEOs can make a killing while more people are actually falling into homelessness because of the lack of legal representation and because the housing courts need so much help. So there's a tremendous opportunity here, I think, to really make sure that we are focused on getting people on their feet if they can, and certainly have the supports needed to make sure that they're living the dignified life that they deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Knight, for support for families.
So, I was sorry to miss the first half, which I know was more about family homelessness. I didn't get to talk to you about the homelessness dashboard that we've set up in the controller's office, because this data wasn't being provided consistently publicly on a regular basis anywhere. And so there's a great homelessness dashboard that you can look at. I mean, I wish we didn't have to have a homelessness dashboard, but it speaks to how people are coming into the shelters, how long they're there. But what I wanted us to focus on was exits. What is helping people get out? And then we tried to ask some questions because, of course, what we should be measuring is, are those families able to thrive for the long term? So not just did they exit shelter, but if they needed a new job, did they get it? Is their income going up? Where is their kid in school? Are they able to stay in the same school, or did they enter a new one? What we ought to be measuring is whether families can thrive in this city. And those are the things that I want to be both doing and measuring. And of course, it's different for different families. If you're escaping domestic violence, then the wraparound services that you need in that post-shelter support might look a little different than if what you need is a good job. And if you've got a couple of kids in school and we're thinking, let's make sure those kids get the supports that they need to transition into and succeed in that school. Right now, we're measuring none of that. We are basically measuring like how much does it cost to have somebody in shelter? And a lot of those shelters, especially during the growth in the number of asylum seekers, are these no-bid emergency contracts to for-profit behemoths with no history of providing shelter services to anyone, and we literally measured 0 outcomes. So what you need is a mayor that says, look, the outcomes families want, which is growth in income, which is thriving, which is kids doing well in school, which is getting those good jobs, which is staying stably housed. That's what we got to measure. So that's what we'll put up on that dashboard when I'm there. And of course, so much of that comes from providing the supports people need after they move either out of shelter or if they're on the street, from the street through that housing first model into an apartment. And then let's keep tracking so that we're actually helping them thrive.
Thank you both, I so appreciate it. I also just want to take a moment before we wrap to thank our wonderful question askers in the front row. Thank you all for taking part tonight. Wendy, Tarsha, Khadisha, and Vanti, thank you so much. And thank you guys for staying till our wrap time. I appreciate it. Make sure everybody goes out and votes in the primary in June and the general election in November. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it.